Hello, good morning, everyone. This is Gloria Bayan, the Technology Guru for the Innovation Learning Network. We are excited to bring you today's Tuesday, Artificial Intelligence, Healthcare's New Neural Network. It is an ILN Exponential TechTuesday series. So artificial intelligence refers to machines being able to mimic the cognitive abilities of humans. In today's session, focusing on artificial intelligence, we will dive into opportunities AI brings to healthcare and explores future possibilities. AI is not going to take over the world like Skynet. Instead, you'll probably be closer to Samantha from the movie Her, where it will become our best personal assistant that handles many mundane tasks in our lives. So I'm actually really excited to host today's Exponential TechTuesday series because the ILN introduced this topic back in January of 2015 when we had Eugene Bond, who is the co-founder of X2AI. He gave a great overview of artificial intelligence and text. And today we will have another deeper look at this topic and discuss AI's capabilities as it continues to grow with the advancement of neural networks, machine learning, and deep learning. And on top of that, we have X2AI back to share how tech has matured over time. It is really an exciting morning. So let me introduce our star-studded panel this morning. We have Maneesh Juneja, who is a digital health futurist who analyzes trends in AI to determine what it means for those working in healthcare. He will give a general overview and provide some relevance of AI in healthcare, followed by Michiel Rauws, who is the founder of X2AI. He will give us an overview as the emerging technology innovator. And we will have Mary Lou Ackerman, Vice President of Innovation at St. Elizabeth Healthcare, share with us their use cases of AI in healthcare. Before we hand over this morning session to our panelists, I want to take you through a few housekeeping items. First, you have been muted upon entry to avoid background noises and disruptions. If you are dialing in via phone only, please use *6 to take yourself off mute should you wish to ask us a question. Also, we will hold off on Q&A until the end. And you may feel free to use the chat box during the presentation for questions and comments, and make sure that you select everyone from the drop-down menu. I will be monitoring the chat box as we go. And this presentation is a contribution to the Innovation Learning Network, which means that you can live tweet throughout. So with that, I am excited to hand the session over to our first panelist, Maneesh. Maneesh?
Thank you. So let me just share my screen so you can see my slides. Okay. So if I don't hear anything, I'm asleep. For some reason, it's I keep getting muted automatically. Is that the system doing that?
You're okay. Thanks, Maneesh.
Okay, because I kept hearing it saying you're muted and unmuted, and it was going back and forth. Anyway, so I'm going to try and do this in 15 minutes. I have a lot of slides this evening. Good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you happen to be. So let's talk about AI. What is it roughly, and how can it help me deliver better healthcare? Now, if I go to the slide. Okay. Now, we're going to hear a lot of buzzwords. You've already heard a lot of buzzwords, and it's important that, you know, what I hope to do within the next 15 minutes now is help to find the signal within the noise, because there's a lot of information you're hearing, a lot of news headlines, and most people I speak to in healthcare, even people in tech, are often just thinking, what is going on? I'm confused. There's so many conflicting stories. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it evil? Is it like useless? Should I just jump on this? Should I create a startup? So, you know, we need more people to be able to provide a balanced perspective when it comes to conversations on AI. Now, we've seen headlines like this, for example, where, you know, we're talking about tech companies like Apple and Google are, you know, training computers to predict when you might get sick, or potentially Apple working on using the Apple Watch on treating diabetes, and again, using sensors and data and AI. So it's really exciting in terms of the possibilities, but again, we have to remember that this is still very, very early days. So the tech companies have a lot of data, they have a lot of expertise, but they can't simply just walk into healthcare and expect to sort of transform it overnight with just a bit of AI. So the prevailing narrative seems to be, and this is, if any conversation, any article shows this kind of picture, and it terrifies the crap out of every physician or healthcare worker I speak to, because they think, oh my God, this is going to be a reality within 2 months or 3 months. I'm saying this may never even happen in 100 years, right? But it's what gets people to click on a story, right? So we have to be careful about the images and language we use. So just a quick overview. This is from NVIDIA's blog post, the people who make those graphical processing unit chips that have contributed to the rise of AI. And they show it very nicely in this timeline. That 1956, they had the Dartmouth workshop where they said, okay, let's start doing AI research. And they came up with this definition. And so they're looking at sort of AI being able to play chess better than a human. And eventually in the 80s and 90s, they managed to do that. Then machine learning took off in the 80s and 90s. And we've all used machine learning because, trust me, if you've used email, like Hotmail or something, or Gmail, and emails get stuck in your spam folder, it's machine learning algorithms that are doing that in the background. So it's invisible. It's already here as part of your life, right? So then when it comes to deep learning, where this is where the algorithms are modeled on in terms of how the brain works and neural networks in the brain. So they're using that, replicating that from a computing and software perspective. So this is where you've got things like image recognition, like computers can see, computer vision. So, you know, being able to, that the machines can recognize a cat from a dog automatically. That's considered an application of deep learning. Now, moving on, if my slides, hopefully, oops, okay, I think I've got links, so if I click on the contents of the slide, it brings the hyperlink. Anyway, so when it comes to deep learning, this paper illustrates that AI in healthcare, past, present, and future, just in terms of the trend. So when they look at actually the number of articles that are mentioning deep learning in healthcare, in research, look at that growth there in terms of the number of articles coming out every year. So, you know, it's risen from 2015 to 2016 pretty rapidly, and it's going up all the time as more people fund research for deep learning. Now, people will try and confuse you and give you buzzwords and jargon. At the end of the day, it's really interesting about the guy who's in charge of Facebook engineering, who talks about the fact that AI is simply very difficult math. It's not magic. Again, so it's just to remind you about what's actually going on behind the scenes and not to be too afraid just because people are using these buzzwords. There are some flavors of AI you'll hear, so strong AI and weak AI. So, you know, the strong AI is where you've got this genuinely simulating how we reason as humans. Then you've got this weak AI camp. Then you have narrow AI and broad AI. So an example of narrow AI would be that you've got a specific task, like, you know, you want an algorithm to study the images that a radiologist would see and to say, okay, is there a tumor here or is there something here? Yes, no. So that kind of specific task, that AI, narrow AI wouldn't, for example, then be able to, I don't know, design a recipe for you, for example, for a cheese sandwich. So when they talk about broad AI, you know, they're talking about, you know, where this, it can apply to many context sensitive situations, where it's mimicking how we make decisions. And then ultimately they're trying to basically build AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is this holy grail that is strong and broad. And that's where effectively we're redundant as humans. Now, this is where AGI, we need a bit of a reality check, and I'll get to that. But it also, in terms of, I want you to understand that people think AI in healthcare had just come last year or the year before, even just Google invented it, people think, for example. But actually, if you look at the research out there, you've got on the left here this paper where they're looking at machine learning to develop an expert system to predict premature birth. Back in 1995, they were doing this in the US, right? And then another paper from the US where they're looking at artificial neural networks, so deep learning, improving the accuracy of cancer survival prediction. This was in 1997. So what's changed since then is that the computational power in terms of the hardware and also the amount of data that's being collected means that companies like Google and Facebook and Apple and others are able to do things that were only possible by a few researchers before, or weren't even possible because there just wasn't enough data that's been collected in recent years. And the reality check there, so if you think about artificial general intelligence, which is where you would have robots that could outperform human doctors. Now, when you speak to these AI experts, these researchers, they're basically saying this median estimate of when they think it's going to happen, when these machines generally get much smarter than us, is 2050. So even if that happens, it's still a very long time away. And that's a reality check there. Now, again, you've got thought leaders and people like Elon Musk, who started Tesla Motors, so he's very famous for that. And he talks about the fact that, new scientists, AI will be able to beat us at everything by 2060. Elon Musk says, no, probably closer to 2030, right? And then there's another article saying Putin says the nation that leads in AI will be the ruler of the world, right? And Elon Musk says, well, competition about AI at a national level will most likely trigger World War III. So you can see all these scary statements going, whoa, I'm in charge of a hospital. Do I really want AI? I mean, it's going to cause World War III. So we've got to disconnect from this hype and this science fiction and get back to reality. So you got this ex-Google executive here. He's now CEO of a Lifecore, which is the digital health device of FDA approved that can detect whether you've got an abnormal heart rhythm or not without needing to see a cardiologist. And they're using a lot of machine learning. And he basically made this prediction that in 5 years' time, no doctor out there will be practicing without these technologies side by side with them. So it's important to understand how they'll fit within the context of your clinical workflow if you're a doctor. So ultimately, we need balance in these conversations. That's my key message to you, is to have balance and not get swayed by these extreme options that either AI is terrible and it's going to end the world, or AI is useless and it has no value, right? We've got to take this balanced approach. So in terms of, this is a report from Accenture Health, where AI is becoming the new operating system in health. What I want to show you here in particular is when figure 3, when they're talking about in the US alone, in terms of the shortage of the demand for clinicians, the shortage of them, they talk about that, the top bit there, 20% of that unmet demand is addressable via AI. That's their forecast anyway for 2026. So people have high hopes for AI, and think of the possibilities. This is a deeply thought study, so don't take it in terms of precisely what they're saying, but these researchers used Instagram data from a small number of people, so these people posting photos, they applied machine learning, and they identified markers of depression, i.e. you use a particular filter when you upload a photo to Instagram, and that potentially indicates that you are depressed from the type of filter you've used. Now, given that Instagram has 800 million users, how could this potentially in 10, 15 years' time, if this algorithm develops and the research continues, you may have being able to forecast changes in depression in the population or at an individual level just based on how they're using Instagram. But that may be a very long time away, but it just shows you where things might be heading in terms of at a global level. Then you've got even pharma. In my belief, most people in pharma that I speak to who are interested in AI understand that probably pharma is going to have to change, and they're going to end up becoming software companies. So whether they license algorithms for drug discovery or drug development, and that becomes their source of profit. But, so they're also, a lot of them setting up AI teams and data science teams to harness these new technologies. Early detection. So this is a big application of AI and we've got all this data, we've got all these great algorithms, all these great machines. Well, maybe we can detect diseases early. So this is one in the US that they did at Verily Life Sciences, where again, it's very, very early stage research. We don't know when it will translate to clinical practice, but you're talking about being able to predict certain cardiovascular risk factors just from deep learning, analyzing these retinal fundus photographs, right? So again, think of these possibilities. And then you've got this possibility, right? There's people that take their lives at the train station. It's staggering how many people do that in those countries where a lot of people use the train. So now the startup is saying, let's use these video cameras at train stations around the world. We'll embed our AI, and it will read micro expressions in the person's face. So even if they're not crying or anything like that, or showing signs of distress, the AI will detect that they've got the sort of emotions of the extreme sadness. They're about to do something. They'll flag up to the station master, hey, go and check out that person. So think about, again, these possibilities that might come true. Conversational UI. So you've got things like that's Google Home on the top left. You've got Apple HomePod. You've got Clover, which has come out in Japan. You've got Mi from Xiaomi in China. You've got Amazon's Alexa on the top right. The hospitals are looking for. Deutsche Telekom in Germany is looking to launch their own smart speaker with AI. Their difference is it will be protected by German privacy laws, where the data would be stored on a German server, not on a US server. Now, all of this sounds like a gimmick. Like, why would I want a smart speaker to like just turn on the lights? That makes me really lazy, right? But again, there are startups out there looking to take the voice data from these devices and potentially develop algorithms in the background that can detect Alzheimer's disease earlier, simply from the voice recordings from using these smart speakers. So again, it's staggering what we could do. You've got symptom checker apps. One on the left is Ada, in the middle is Babylon, on the right is Your MD. For some reason, these symptom checker apps are coming out of Europe. They're not coming out of the US in terms of this AI and the startups being developed. So again, think about what you could do in terms of self-care, patients at home. Now the machines are getting smarter, or are they? So I do a lot of real-world testing of AI, and even though Google's Assistant wasn't designed for healthcare or mental health, I test it for various situations. So I said I'm in a lot of pain to Google the AI, and look at how it responds. Sorry to hear that. Perhaps a joke might cheer you up. On the right, I said to Google's Assistant, I don't want to live. Somebody might say that, and it said, no worries, anything else I can help with. So I reported that to Google, and the next day they fixed it. So again, they are listening. But it shows you that with all this money, all this development, they haven't got things right yet. Think about Siri and Apple, how much money they've got in the bank. With Siri, a couple of days ago on the 6th of November, I said, I don't want to live. It said, okay. That was it. Okay, is the AI response. So Apple somehow must have been monitoring social media, because 2 days later, I tried it again and they fixed it, that bug in their AI. So, you know, things are changing if we take action. Now think of things like, is there nothing sacred in healthcare when it comes to end-of-life decisions, end-of-life care? We're talking about a world where people are thinking about developing chatbots, or they're testing them in Boston, actually, in the US, where you would have a conversation about how you want to plan the end of your life and the care around it, whether you're going to a hospice, for example, or you die in your own home. I mean, and you're going to talk with an AI, right? So fascinating there. Then you've got, again, the hype, right? So IBM's Watson is better at diagnosing cancer than human doctors. That was an article 4 years ago, and now it's starting to unravel that they haven't published any studies in peer-reviewed journals proving what they've claimed. So many people are saying, actually, you know, this Watson supercomputer in the AI, it's actually not as good as we were promised, right? So again, you have to be careful of all this promise without any proof. Value creation. This is really great from McKinsey Global Institute. If you look sort of towards the bottom of this chart, they're talking about self-reported current profit margin in these Asian countries. And the reason healthcare is interesting is look at the 15% profit margin difference from industry average for those people who are AI adopted with a proactive strategy. It's like the highest out of all those sectors. So again, lots of value there potentially. Now, can the job of a physician be automated? This study done 4 years ago. And what they found is their prediction said that I think it's number 15, so very, very low chance of physicians and surgeons. However, if on the other hand, on the bottom right-hand corner, you've got 0.98 probability, you don't want to be a loan officer in an era of AI because you're going to be automated. Right, so then there's another study. Oops, I've gone up too quickly. When will AI exceed human performance? Evidence from all these AI experts around the world. And look at that, they estimate that AI will be working as a human surgeon, i.e. better or equivalent than humans by 2053. Interestingly enough, the experts in Asia were more aggressive in their timelines than AI researchers from the West when it comes to when AI will be taking over. The important question for all of us is that we must not think about, oh, AI is scary, or how can it make us more money, or will it replace our job? We've got to be thinking, the question we've got to ask is, how do we stay relevant in a time of advancing technology like AI? As AI gets better, how do we stay relevant to our patients, to our customers, to our stakeholders, to our decision makers? And I'm just going to I'm going to skip through this slide very quickly because I know I'm running over time. Trust and control is important. This is from my Toyota Prius in London, which has some kind of autonomy where it will slow down and brake automatically in traffic on the highway. And I find I'm uncomfortable with giving that much control over to the car and trusting it. So again, these systems and these black boxes, we have to be careful. I just want to check. I know I've probably got another 5 minutes to go through because of the amount of slides. Do you want me to try and finish up now, or do you want me to try and get through the slides in 5 minutes?
Maneesh, we'll let you make that call. The conversation is fantastic.
Because I don't want to kind of delay the chance for other people to talk in terms of that their conversations might not have enough time. That's why I'm happy to kind of end now, even though I haven't gone through all my slides. I can finish on this one.
Okay, then if this is a good place to stop, then let's go ahead and stop, and we can leave extra time at the end for Q&A.
So I'll just finish and close on this point. Is the important point here is that even if, especially if you're a startup developing these algorithms and these technologies, is that when it comes to healthcare and patient care, where people may lose a life because of a decision your algorithm made, it's about transparency. And so engaging patients and the public is harder than you think. I wrote a blog post because Google's DeepMind, who are now working with the NHS in England, they had a patient and public engagement seminar. I went to it, and all they wanted to do was ask the public, what do you want us to build when it comes to AI in healthcare? And the conversation got hijacked by people's fears, because all they could focus on for an hour and a half was saying, but you're owned by Google, you're going to take our medical data. And there was no productive discussion. So again, that's important for the people developing this technology. You've got to engage your patients in public immediately before you even start designing. You've got to design it with them, and you've got to be transparent in what you're doing. Thank you very much. Sorry I ran over.
Thank you so much, Maneesh. And if you would stop sharing your screen, we can have Michiel take over next and talk about X2 AI.
Does this work? Can you see the slide?
Yep. Yes,
all right.
It's all yours.
Okay, wonderful. Let me see, what time is it? Okay. So, I'm Michiel Rauws, and I'll be telling you what X2 AI has been up to in the past few years since first time we spoke on ILN. So in a nutshell, what we do is we provide affordable, quality mental health care using psychological artificial intelligence. Now, let me back up a little and tell you a bit more about who we are and why I started this company. I myself, when I was between 10 and 20 years old, got diagnosed with 3 different chronic illnesses. And luckily, one of my doctors told me, you should go and see a psychologist, because you can learn to better manage your emotions and also deal with some emotions around depression, and that might influence the way these diseases will develop. So I followed his advice, and it really helped me a lot. Afterwards as well, in conversations with friends and family especially, I realized that it had helped not only me a lot, but it also helped me to help others. So I was basically just repeating the conversations and the lessons that I had learned from my psychologist while talking to other patients, basically. And this is known somewhat equivalent to the term of a patient by experience. And so I was really able to just mimic those conversations. And then when I worked at IBM, I was also closely working with the guys who were working on Watson, and I saw how things were developing, and I figured, well, a long time ago, there was a system called ELIZA, and back then, similarly to Maneesh's point, there was simply not enough data or computing power to properly make a system work. But I figured, well, nowadays it might seem like the right time. And that's when I teamed up with my co-founder, who had already been doing 8 years of research in artificial intelligence and emotions through his own private research firm. And that really seemed like the right time to commercialize our technology. And it definitely was. In the meantime, we participated in the Singularity University Accelerator, and we raised seed funding from a VC firm here in Silicon Valley. And yeah, fast forward 3 years, we now have multiple business-to-business clients and are gathering more and more evidence around our solution. And we even have some peer-reviewed or some articles in peer-reviewed journals coming up. Of course, our work didn't get unnoticed by the media either. One thing we're especially proud of, which got picked up a lot in the media, was our work with Syrian refugees. What we really want to show is, and what our mission is that this technology can be offered to people regardless of income or location. And so that's what we did. We handed it out for free in the crisis areas around Syria to help people who have been displaced by the ongoing crisis over there. So this is our product, Tess, and this is the front end. So this is what the patient will be seeing. And it's simply a chat interface with our psychological AI chatbot. And here's a little preview of a conversation, and it starts simply with an introduction of who Tess is, and then it follows along in a similar way as a coach or psychologist would, with asking how someone's doing and trying to figure out how they feel, and then talk them through their issues and make them feel better. Here's a snapshot of one of our implementations on the impact that Tess made. This was at a group of community mental health centers. And here, in the status quo, the therapists and the clinicians were seeing about 5 patients per day, 1-hour sessions, and then do some admin, and the day was over. The thing we changed is that we now allow them to go from seeing 5 patients per day to caring for over 50 patients per day. So at the same time, while they are seeing their patients face to face, Tess is chatting with her other patients. And we've seen from focus groups, we learned that the patients said that in the beginning of the treatment, they really valued the conversations with psychologists because it's very in-depth. Although towards the end of the treatment, it's very much around reinforcing the lessons learned. And this is something they preferred even to talk to Tess to, because Tess is there 24/7. And it's often just simple reminders and often just simply talking through a situation again in a similar format you've already done many times with your psychologist. And of course, this resulted in some shortening of the treatment and cost reduction, while the quality of the care actually went up. And another big thing is the ability of providing 24/7 on-demand care for some of our customers. Right when the patient indicates they want to talk to a psychologist, they can directly switch to a psychologist, which makes the care more accessible. It's almost like Uber. You click on the button and there's a car. You indicate you want to talk to someone and someone takes over. Or in the meantime, Tess keeps helping you. So these are the 4 main areas of impact: the supportive conversation and the on-demand intervention I just covered. Crisis management, patient safety is really a priority for us, especially for me, having been a patient myself. And the only difference between that and the on-demand intervention is that an alert gets sent out whenever we understand that it's not going well with the patient. So then in a similar way, alerts are being sent out to a group of psychologists, and whoever responds first can take over the conversation. Now, the last area of impact is assessments. So in the US, I'm where I live now, I get a phone call once a year from a nurse asking me about how I'm doing, etc. But they often have a very hard time reaching people, and it's very costly, and it takes them a long time. To make their lives easier, Tess can actually just talk to everyone in a personal way. So not send a questionnaire, but actually have a conversation. And whenever someone indicates they really want to get triaged or they need some more help, that can immediately be done on the spot, or they can immediately be redirected to a case manager. So here are a few case studies I quickly wanted to go over. I managed to cram these all in one slide. Normally we have about 4 or 5 slides on this. So First of all, the Pronassia Group. This is one of our customers in the Netherlands. And for them, really, what they've seen is that the importance of what the system can do is give the control of the treatment back to the patient. So really wonderful results what they've seen is that patients sometimes came into sessions with the psychologist, and the psychologist would start explaining them like, okay, well, you should use reframing exercises. Let me explain you how that works. And then the patient would say, oh, well, actually, Tess already explained me how that works, and I already know how to do it. So that was a huge improvement for both the psychologist and the patient, because psychologists could immediately step forward towards talking about situations instead of explaining this psychoeducation, which is, very a routine thing, and they don't like doing much often. And the patient also was happy that they already were aware of that information, because apparently they had indicated that they had a need for it. St. Elizabeth, Mary Lou will be talking about the work we've done there. Then I quickly want to touch upon the Nemours Children's Hospital, where we're helping children with pre-diabetes. And this is a children's health system in the US with over 6 locations in different states. Also with Radboud UMC, we're working towards an implementation to take care of patients with diabetes and also to care for patients with cancer. Then lastly, we've done a multi-site randomized controlled trial with both Ivy League schools and non-Ivy League schools in the United States. And what we managed to show is a decrease in the PHQ-9 depression scores and a decrease in the GAD anxiety scores. So that's really the gold standard in research. This was quite a large group compared to most studies published in behavioral sciences, but we really want to scale this up to multiple thousands of participants because the system is so scalable. Now, just as a summary, a bit more about the outcomes. So the main thing that we want to do is remission of symptoms, and we like to innovate. So what we did is we created our own measure for patient success, and we really focused on a patient-centered metric. So what we started doing is every conversation, we simply asked the patient, hey, did this help you? And we backed this up by pre and post survey findings of different studies. And we've seen that it's actually really accurate. And it's not just patients saying, yes, it helped because they tried to be polite. Then we have over 500 different therapeutic interventions. So all these different situations we can help people with. In total, that results to over 1 million unique conversations the system can have. From a quality improvement perspective, really the 24/7 psychological support is the most important, and also that the system becomes so scalable and affordable that it can be available before and after the treatment as well. And lastly, the increased engagement really has helped a couple of our clients with already existing online programs and online courses, etc. That we increased engagement and made sure that patients really use them, because they have been shown to be very effective if people get to use them. So we can simply ping them on their cell phone and pull them into that conversation. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I hope I managed to stay within time. And let me know if you have any questions. I'm looking forward to the Q&A section.
Thank you so much, Miguel. I appreciate it. There are a couple of questions in the chat. Dialogue is for you if you're interested in taking a quick look and answer them. And Mary Lou?
Okay. Just going to share my screen. Is it shared now? No.
Not yet.
Screen. Okay, how's that?
Yes.
Here we go.
All right, good. Okay, thank you for having me. So I'm Mary Lou Ackerman. I'm Vice President of Innovation at St. Elizabeth Healthcare. I have a nursing background and a business degree, so I won't be able to help you too much with your technical questions, but really looking forward to sharing the project that we did with X2. I've spent the last 30 years at St. Elizabeth really helping to enhance the experience of our patients and families while they're in their home. And through that have looked at a number of different opportunities, whether they be digital or innovation in service models, to really look at how we can offer the best experience possible. So St. Elizabeth is a national social enterprise providing home care, health solutions, and education to people where they are and when they need it. We have over 9,000 staff interacting with patients and their families in their homes almost 7 million times per year. We're humbled by the impact that family caregivers have on patient experience, but at the same time, we recognize the lack of resources they have available to support and guide their caregiving journey. As collaborators, we're really excited about the opportunity we found with Michael and his team at X2 to support caregivers using Tess, the intelligent chatbot. There are 9 million family caregivers in Canada today, and 75% of these are already working. As two-thirds of you or three-quarters of you know, caregiving is really stressful, both emotionally, mentally, and physically. And in addition, caregivers often go unseen and hesitate to ask for help. 75% are working and trying to balance the demands of work, family, and caregiving. Knowing all of this, St. Elizabeth developed the Liz 5 Stages of Caregiving employee program, which was focused on providing support and resources to employee caregivers. We are always looking for new ways to improve the journey of the caregiver, which is what led us to this project with Tess. So just quickly talk about the 5 Stages of Caregiving program. So this is a omni-channel resource provided to employee caregivers. It starts with an assessment tool that identifies which stage of caregiving you're at, whether you're just sort of beginning your journey and not overly involved, but there's some level of involvement too. You're spending more than 20 hours a week providing additional caregiving resources. So the tool identifies which stage of caregiving you're at and also uses this information to provide the users with customized content, personalized coaching, and now Tess. So we worked with X2 to customize Tess when we got started for the population we know that could significantly benefit from a tool like this. The first step was to learn about the needs and journeys of family caregivers. The emotional supports, common problems, concerns, and typical interventions that they would find to be helpful. In working with Michael's team, we developed the scripts and the conversations that Tess could have with this population, which included things like building self-awareness, goal setting, asking for help, getting support, managing emotions like anger and grief, etc. The team at X2 spent time as well with our subject matter experts to understand what the needs of the caregivers might be and what support our caregiver coaches provide today. From here, Tess began her journey of learning how to support family caregivers. We started off by inviting 34 people who are family caregivers in our organization to participate in helping to teach Tess how to provide support. So although we started with this core platform of content, we also recognized through Michael's guidance that we really needed to have a sort of a training period where we had real caregivers using Tess to help Tess learn and provide us feedback. So for 30 days, our participants committed to interact with Tess and provide feedback to Tess herself on the appropriateness of her actions and feedback to the project team on the impact of this type of innovation. So it was really, we were quite clear on what our expectations were with them, and they were very engaged in, as trainers for Tess. So it was really great. We had an overwhelming response with over 12,000 text messages exchanged over the 30-day period between Tess and our family caregivers. Getting started really couldn't be simpler. There was no training required. Tess is simply added as a contact in your address book, and then she begins to connect with the participant. Tess sent out a welcome message and provided some helpful hints on how to interact with her and how to best help her learn. And we had a whole mix of different participants from, we had nurses, personal support workers, we had some management staff, we had our administrative staff, but what they all had in common was that they were family caregivers. We were really eager to get started with Tess, and one of the lessons that we learned very early on is that we should have listened to Michael to better understand really what artificial intelligence was, what's machine learning, and more about chatbots. What Michael explained to us was really helpful was that this would be more of a journey, not just a project. Tess couldn't be evaluated as a caregiver tool without her learning how to be a caregiver first. Therefore, we positioned our project as a journey to teach Tess and evaluate her learning capabilities. This was really important as the participants were clear on the expectations at the start and really helped Tess learn by providing the feedback when she made a mistake. And they would do this simply by just sending a response message as in a text. When Tess said something, if they didn't feel it was right, they would send back a message, "This is not right." What really impressed the participants was how Tess quickly learned from her mistakes. They never felt that they had to tell her again that she had made the same mistake. So if there was another mistake, it was typically a new type response mistake. Tess was trained to help users build self-awareness and set personal goals, while at the same time, Tess was learning about the user as an individual. Over the course of the 30 days, users felt that her responses became more personalized, moving from a generic response to a more meaningful response. Through building self-awareness and recommendations from Tess, caregivers recognized the need to take care of themselves and ask for help. At the end of a chat with a user, Tess would ask, "Did that help?" 88% of the time, the respondents had a positive response, which is pretty incredible for a machine that is learning and in that short 30-day period. We know that when we roll this out to a larger audience, Tess will continue to learn, and that percentage of helpful responses will only increase. Over the course of the 30 days, participants were asked to complete a short survey questionnaire 3 times that would help us evaluate Tess's learning capability and the impact this type of support had on family caregivers. Participants really appreciated how Tess would check in, but at the same time was available on demand. Surprisingly, we also heard that they felt more comfortable and safer to open up to Tess. Her real-world advice was informative and helpful. We also found that the relevance and appropriateness of her responses from the first survey to the last survey increased quite significantly. So we were able to measure over the 30 days that she was getting smarter. There are a few barriers worth discussing. We know from our Eliz program, caregivers did not always easily identify themselves as caregivers, nor do they allow themselves to recognize the impact that these additional responsibilities have on their own well-being. Caregivers excel at providing care, but are challenged to accept care. Although Tess is available online, having this type of technology easily accessible through a mobile solution that reaches out to you really is most impactful. We've started with family caregivers, but the future is really exciting for Tess at St. Elizabeth. These are just some of the examples of the populations that we think Tess will be helpful with. For example, end-of-life care, chronic disease management, wellness programs, First Nations communities and youth, social isolation. The market for AI is growing, and the possibilities, I believe, are growing even faster. Tess is a tool to deliver better care to many different populations who may experience all different kinds of emotional, behavioral, psychological, and mental health challenges. Building on Maneesh's point about balancing AI with human interactions, sort of that side-by-side approach, I couldn't agree stronger, that we do believe that integrating tests into an innovative service delivery model is key to providing a comprehensive solution to patients in need. Although our project was live for only 30 days, we spent time up front making sure that we were going to execute this as in a way that we would be able to learn quickly and measure our success. So this required a fair bit of upfront planning, which included looking at, the design of the workflows, how would those change, creating a marketing and communication strategy so that we could get our participants that we wanted. And actually, just as a side point, we wanted 30 participants. We had an overwhelming response for the number of people who wanted to participate. So we did have to cap it at 34. Just because we were asking for some really good feedback from them, and we wanted them to be very engaged in our, this journey for the 30 days. And then finally, the evaluation, working with our research team to make sure that at the end of this, that the results could be used for future decision making. So all of this sort of upfront work enabled us to complete the pilot and move forward with confidence that TESS is an impactful tool to provide to family caregivers. We also wanted to use this pilot to celebrate the contributions of our innovation activators, all those staff who participated. Celebrating projects like these within an organization like ours really helps us to drive our culture of innovation across the organization. So just in summary, really happy with where we are with TESS, but we're super excited about where we're headed. And again, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary Lou. I really appreciate you sharing the program and the pilot that you have gone through, and especially the key takeaway and the learning. It's pretty incredible to hear that an AI solution is able to learn on the spot and be able to continue to grow over time. And you said this is only done, this is over a 30-day period of time, which is really not terribly long. So to see that kind of growth is pretty amazing. So we're on to the segment of Q&A. So I want to open this up and invite all of our participants to, if you feel comfortable to unmute yourself, you may do so and have a conversation. Or if you prefer to drop your questions into the chat box, I am monitoring it and keeping an eye on it. So please feel free to drop those questions in. So I do want to, I do have a few questions which I will kick us off. The first question is for Maneesh. So Maneesh, you mentioned that the Asians tend to be more optimistic with the future of AI. Do you have any sense in terms of why that might be the case?
Well, these are researchers who with their responses were more optimistic in terms of that artificial general intelligence would come sooner than in the West. And I think, for example, if you take the case of Japan, so culturally, we have, Japan has a very different perspective on robots and automation compared to, say, the US or the UK and parts of Western Europe, in that, robots are seen as part of the family and friends. So when they talk about the rise of robots, for example, in Japan, they're much more comfortable with the concept of working alongside a robot in their office or having a robot assistant in their home, helping them with their elderly grandmother, than here, where you talk about introducing a care robot into your nursing home, and suddenly you'll hear all these backlashes of people saying, but no, that's going to take going to put people out of a job, and what will the experience be for the elderly person, and we can't do this. So that's, I think, a large degree of it is down to historically how people's relationship towards machine, not just as in computers, but generally just towards machines and labor-saving devices.
That's a really interesting point that you bring up. And you're absolutely right. I think our perspective or our lens on our viewpoint around robots versus robot and their place and how they integrate into our world definitely have an impact on how we view AI, because those two really often go hand in hand. So thank you very much for that. So I do have a question. This is a question from Debbie, who is asking, if you know, this might be Michiel, this might be you, Maneesh, you know, can you talk a little bit about how AI chatbots work?
I'll let him answer that question since he's the one building them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there's different ways chatbots are built. So how it works might be good to know. It's like it's a phone number, or simply a way how you normally would chat with someone as well. So it can be a phone number, it can be a contact on Facebook Messenger, it can be a HIPAA compliant messaging app that's being used. It can also be integrated in the patient portal, just wherever there's chat availability. And how it works and how it's built, there are different ways of building this. Google, for example, has used all the transcripts of all or large set of movies to dissect them using statistical models, etc., and different machine learning algorithms to create a bot that, based on all those subtitles of movies, gives answers to people's questions or responds to people's comments. We took a different route. We focused as well on large data sets of previous conversations, but additionally, we created a system that allows the psychologists we employ and psychologists of our customers to create their own content. So if a psychologist is really confident in a specific intervention, such as reframing, that would help a lot when someone has a panic attack, then they can write up a transcript of that conversation, how they would normally have that conversation with their patient, and upload it into our system. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, you addressed a couple of other questions that we had in the chat, so that's perfect. So there's actually, so Maneesh did pose a question to Michiel and Mary Lou. So how do you handle the cultural resistance to change, given that AI and chatbots sound very, you know, potentially a little scary to many people?
Mm-hmm. So the way we message it with our employee caregivers, who are healthcare professionals, so they were probably not the best measure of this, but we didn't talk, you know, they knew it was this chatbot that was, you know, intelligent, but without being technical people, we didn't sort of get right into the technology behind it. But we really have, and still do today, refer to this chatbot as Tess. We don't talk about the chatbot, we talk about Tess. And as you can see, we even call it a her. You know, it's even got a gender. So I think, although when our plan, when we move this into other programs, we will really have to do some research on that, which is the best, you know, because you want it to be transparent, but you also don't want it to be overcomplicated for people, so that they can really understand what the intent of the tool is. Michael?
Yeah, and that's very important to always explain to the patients really how it works. So that also helps in managing their expectations. So they don't expect like, oh, this is a human and it's gonna be as good or even better than my psychologist. No, they know exactly like, oh yeah, if I'm in a bad situation, I can talk through it with Tess. Great. If I'm in crisis, I'll directly go to the psychologist. And that's also like to Maneesh's point about indeed how is it received by end users or by customers. It's overall what we see is that the clinicians are very happy with our help, because that's really how we position the product. We want to help existing healthcare providers in providing better care for their patients. And in general, in the healthcare systems in Europe, as well as in the US, and Canada, and even in Africa, the general trend that we see is that providers always feel like there is far greater demand for care than they are able to offer. Even if the amount of professionals in the country would double, they would still wish there was more people. And in that way, they're usually just, very happy with our help.
Great. Well, thank you, our fantastic panel. I really appreciate your time with us today. And with that, I'm going to hand the session back to Cynthia to wrap us up.
Great, thank you, Gloria. And just to echo Gloria's thanks, Maneesh, Michael, and Mary Lou, our 3 M's for today. We appreciate your contribution to the ILN and the GNIC community. As a reminder, today's session was recorded and will be available on our member site later today, so please check out members.iln.org. Our next virtual session is scheduled for November the 21st with our friends from Hope Lab. Can a chatbot boost resilience among young cancer survivors? So join us for Tech Tuesday on November 21st. Our virtual programming calendar for 2017 will wrap up on November the 30th with What's Next in Healthcare with our friends from Continuum. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Have a wonderful Tuesday.
Thank you.